What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome to Not Your Status Quo's Theory-Palooza for The Mandalorian Season 2, and we are still maintaining proper social distancing. This is the way.
This is the way.
And make sure that you hit that subscribe button and ring the bell if you want to be notified of all of our future videos.
And while you're hitting buttons, do us a solid. Hit that share button, share with your friends. Like this video. We would really appreciate it.
The Mandalorian Season 2. We have been waiting for this, and they've been kind of keeping their lips sealed on what we can expect, but your fellow nerds, we've got some great theories about what we think is about to come out. So, hope you guys are ready for a Theory-Palooza. So, what we know so far, the release date, they've already kind of confirmed. They originally said the fall of 2020, but as of recently, we now know that it'll be in October of 2020. We still do not have an exact date, but at least we know that. Also, a couple of things that we have been reported on, or things that have been told to us. We know, based on some reports from The Hollywood Reporter, that Boba Fett is going to appear in Season 2 of The Mandalorian. We kind of figured that from the first season when we heard the jingle jangle of his feet. You know, we kind of saw something walking up on Tatooine. So we kind of figured that he was going to appear in there. And he is going to be played by Temuera Morrison, who, as you guys might remember, played Jango Fett in Attack of the Clones.
And we do know that Boba Fett is a clone of Jango Fett. And who else is a clone of Jango Fett? Captain Rex, who we know is alive. He, participated in the Battle of Endor. So I think there's a very strong chance that he's going to play two roles in this episode or in this season. He's going to be Boba Fett and he's going to be Captain Rex, because we've also heard a rumor about another character possibly showing up. But I will leave that to Doug.
Yeah, so we already know that Boba Fett is probably going to show up. It's going to be just a guest role. That was kind of like some of the worries that sort of came out before Season 1 premiered, back when the idea of The Mandalorian was first getting leaked. People are kind of thinking, oh, okay, whatever, you're just going to make a show about Boba Fett, whatever. People weren't paying it much mind. But then when it finally premiered and we realized, oh, this is a totally different character, they made it very clear to us that if Boba Fett ever did appear, it would be in a very minor role. So we do know that. We know that Captain Rex will most likely appear. We may see another clone here or there popping up. That'd be pretty cool. We also know that based on a report from Slash Film, that Katee Sackhoff is going to be showing up. And you guys probably remember her from Star Wars Rebels. She will be playing a live-action role, a live-action version of Bo-Katan, which I think is pretty cool. It's the first time that she's been played live-action.
And we know that Bo-Katan was not only in Rebels for a while, for a couple episodes, she was also in, the Clone Wars, always voiced by Katee Sackhoff. So it's really cool that she's actually getting to play the live-action role that she voiced for so many years. It's going to be pretty cool to see.
All right, so another report that came from Slash Film. We know that, or rather, we kind of have rumors. We can't say that we know this for a fact yet, but a lot of rumors have been floating around both from Variety and from Slash Film that Rosario Dawson has been cast to play Ahsoka Tano. Those of you who don't really remember the name, you'll probably remember her from Daredevil and some of the other MCU TV shows. All right, so Rosario Dawson has rumored to be cast to play Ahsoka Tano. So, kind of in a weird twist. The reason why I want to bring this up before we get into what we think, Bo-Katan and the others will be doing. I think it's kind of unusual. This is me personally, that they did get the voice actress for Bo-Katan to reprise her role live action, but for whatever reason, they did not get the voice actress for Ahsoka Tano to reprise her role live action. And I thought that was a little curious. What do you guys think?
Well, I think you guys know my opinion on the Rosario Dawson thing. I don't think that she fits the Ahsoka character, but I think I was basing that on the Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, because that's a much younger Ahsoka from the one that's on Rebels. And clearly the one that's on Rebels is going to be even older now, because the Rebels happened before A New Hope. So this is 5 years after, Return of the Jedi. So, it's going to be a little older person. So, but overall, with her previous acting, I just don't know how she's going to make it fit. But I'm excited about the character. I've always liked the character of Ahsoka. I thought she had the most complete character development through the Clone Wars and Rebels, and the one who never made it to the big screen. So I'm really excited, even though if it's a small character, just to launch her own show for herself. So I don't, it says even if when she's on the show, it will be just a small appearance. That's what I think. I think she'll be on there to help him to take care of a problem on one episode or something, and then branch off into her own show.
Yeah, I kind of think that too. Yeah, we were sort of talking about this before, but yeah, most of these roles, they've been reported as just guest roles. Nothing real serious. But that's kind of been the way The Mandalorian has been so far. Whenever they've got somebody in there that's not the Mandalorian and not the child, it's usually just there for a short guest appearance. Like back when we saw the first episode, we're like, oh, okay, cool. So he'll probably be traveling around maybe with IG-11. Oh, well, IG-11 gets shot. Okay. Well, maybe he'll be traveling around with I Have Spoken. Oh, well, nope, guess not. Left them on the planet. So it seems like everybody that he sort of hung out with for a period of time, it was just for that one episode, and then they moved on with their adventure. And I think that will probably be the case with all of these other characters as well. I think they're going to make their appearance.
And I kind of think, it fits, like Doug was saying, it fits into how the show is. Characters come in and then they leave. They don't stay for the entire season. The focus is on, Din Djarin. And I think, for those of you who saw Rebels, we know what Sabrine Wren and Ahsoka Tano was doing at the end of that. And we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. But I think their mission is going to intersect with Mandalorian's mission at some point. They're going to maybe work together for one episode, and then they're going to go their separate ways again.
Yeah. So other than the information about some of the characters that might show up, again, they've been pretty tight-lipped. They haven't mentioned really any plot points. So we can't really say for a fact what we know. However, we can draw a couple of conclusions that we're pretty sure are going to happen in season 2. And this is based on what we've seen in season 1, and also based on some of the characters, also based on what we saw in Rebels and the Clone Wars. We can kind of draw some conclusions based on this, because one of the things that we're pretty sure of is that the Mandalorian series is going to attempt to stray as far from the Disney sequels for now as much as I can. Unfortunately, the Last Jedi didn't do as well as it didn't perform as well. It did fine in the box office at first, but performance-wise, it actually did worse than The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens. So I think if Disney has learned anything from that, they're going to maybe touch on a few plot points, but they are not going to use the films, even the original films. I don't think they're going to really use them for their overarching story or any of their plots. They're most likely going to do what they've been doing so far. They'll use the Star Wars universe as their playground, which is good. In my opinion, it works. What they'll do is, they'll give us our little fan service, which we have talked about before. They kind of do fan service right. This isn't, oh, here's your father's lightsaber. Oh, by the way, Chewie, here's that medal. Instead, what they kind of do is they'll throw it in as sort of like a little background thing. Like, we'll hear, oh, okay, they're going to Tatooine, but it's not really made a big deal of it. And they'll have a little background scene, like you'll see a robot inside the cantina where you never saw a droid in there before. So it's kind of little intermittent fan servicey things like that. But in my opinion, I feel like they do that right.
Yeah, and I think, all of the, I totally agree. It's their own story. They may have intersections with other parts from the movies and everything else, but I think they're going to stay down their own path. And, I think that says a lot about all of these guest stars and what we talked about earlier. It's going to be maybe building to their own show. I think it's maybe going to be like, here's what they're doing now, and then they can have their own show and it'll build off of that. But it's not going to be where the Mandalorian goes. He's got his own story. He's got his own tale to tell, and they're going to, do that as best they can.
And they've been trying to get Boba Fett his own kind of show or movie for years. And this could be a springboard to it if they somehow figure out how, and they're really good. Filoni and Favreau, they're really good at coming up with stories that make sense, that seem feasible in a Star Wars universe. And if they could come up with some story about how he escaped the Sarlacc pit, I don't think it would take much for the Star Wars fans to be like, oh yeah, okay, that could happen. He's out. Let's delve into that character. So, it could be a way that we could springboard like 2 or 3 series out of Mandalorian, itself.
And I really think Disney Plus, I think they're going to kind of push for that. Or, Disney as a company, they're going to push for as many of these series as they can. First off, they don't want the Star Wars universe to become stagnant. We don't know when the next actual film is going to come out. We don't know what the plans are going to be for it. We don't know what they have in mind, who's going to direct. We don't even know if it's going to be within the next 5 or 10 years. So they kind of need to keep the Star Wars universe fresh in everybody's mind. They can't do that alone with just their parks. So they need good TV series. The Clone Wars has ended. Rumors are kind of floating around about another season of Rebels coming around, but we don't know if that is based in fact or not. So they're going to have to rely on a lot of these series like The Mandalorian, which a lot of people praised. I mean, really, it has done incredibly well. It got a lot of people to sign up for Disney Plus. If this Obi-Wan series, which we're hearing a little bit about, is as good as we think it's going to be, and if this Ahsoka Tano series is going to be as good as we think it's going to be, I mean, there, like you said, Dave, there's really no limit to what they can do. They might springboard a lot of different series off of that, and they could use The Mandalorian as sort of its launching pad, its launch point of, sort of introducing these series. So, like, for instance, maybe if they do want to introduce another season of Rebels, they might introduce the idea of, some of the characters on a search for Rex or something like that. Or not even Rex, but for Ezra, yeah.
I'm also, they were going to do an animated series on, I think it was called The High Republic, is before Phantom Menace. I don't know if you guys have heard that rumor as well.
No, that's kind of a book series. They're what the rumor is, well, they've talked about the High Republic. It's going to be the books, a bunch of books intertwining. There's been rumors that that's what the next set of movies is going to be, but nothing has been confirmed on that end. And really, the only real rumor about any cartoons that have come out of Lucasfilm is either another season of Rebels or a Rebels sequel of some type. So, I think it would be, if the movies start going down the High Republic, we may get some branches off there, but I don't think anything is in the works right now for, a High Republic cartoon. But if the movies do well, we'll certainly see one.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and talk about a couple of items that we're pretty sure. So a couple of plot points that we think are definitely going to show up in season 2. And this is based off of items that we saw in season 1. Let's talk a little bit about the Darksaber and the role that it might play in season 2, and how Bo-Katan might fit into that.
Well, we know in Rebels, Sabrine Wren had the Darksaber, and she gave it to Bo-Katan as the leader of Mandalore. And we know from Moth Gideon's speech at the end of the final episode of The Mandalorian season 1, that he was there at the Night of 1,000 Tears when the Empire basically had another siege of Mandalore. So it's definitely going to fit into that somehow. We're going to see how the Empire came in and took over Mandalore again, and how Moth Gideon, who I think we can safely assume is leading that assault, the garrison at Mandalore, takes that from Bo-Katan. Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously. Maybe she gets killed in the attempt, and Bo-Katan is only going to show up in flashbacks, but we'll see Sabrine Wren wanting to get the Darksaber back because of what happened. And, she's going to think that belongs in the hand of a Mandalorian and definitely not in the hands of Moff Gideon.
Yeah, that's a really excellent theory. And I think the way that that's going to work out, I really like that idea that it might actually be Sabine, and that Bo-Katan might actually only show up as a flashback. That's I hadn't thought about that. That's actually an excellent theory. But yeah, I think sort of the way that we saw a lot of flashbacks whenever the Mando was kind of getting new armor made for himself. We saw a couple of flashbacks when he was a child and when he was brought in to the Mandalorian culture. I think we might get some of that this time around too. But yeah, it might actually come from Sabine. She might actually, sort of give us a bit of a plot rundown of, oh, hey, this is what happened, during the Empire. This is what happened. Because we only heard about this Night of a Thousand Tears, but we don't really know what that means or what actually occurred. We can speculate that Moth Gideon, liking his tech the way that he does, getting ready to set up his Death Star tech that he was getting ready to blast, their door with. Obviously, he's probably not the type of individual to fight fair or to take the crown of Mandalore fairly. Probably will not fight for it like Maul did. He'll most likely threaten it from them, and that's probably how he came into getting his hands on the Darksaber. But we'll most likely learn more about it that way, probably via flashbacks. Hell, for all we know, we might actually hear more from Moff Gideon. Maybe he'll be explaining it to somebody, in between shooting some more stormtroopers.
Yeah, it may be, Bo-Katan's view of what happened, or Sabine. Sabine may show up with Ahsoka. We know at the end of Rebels, Ahsoka and Sabine leave to try to find Ezra, who left with Grand Admiral Thrawn's ship when it was pulled into hyperspace. And maybe they, when they're hearing about, the Empire destroying Mandalore again, they show up, only it's too late. Maybe they show up just in time to maybe even help Bo-Katan escape with her life, and she will be alive in this. But I think we may see, Ahsoka and Sabine and possibly Bo-Katan in the present time explaining about the Night of a Thousand Tears. So we get a little more backstory on Din Djarin and what happened and how Moff Gideon got that Darksaber.
And maybe there's a sequence in there where Moff Gideon tells his side of the story, and we all get flashbacks from every one of them.
I think that'd be kind of cool. I wouldn't mind hearing from him too. I sort of like the idea that maybe Moff Gideon has a little bit more going on with him than just another numbered officer of the Empire. I think he might have actually been one of those few individuals. So it seems like in the universe of Star Wars, as weird as it sounds, not that many people know what the Force is. It's like we get this weird mix. On one hand, we'll see episodes of the Clone Wars where people are very aware of the Jedi. They are aware of the failings of the Jedi Council, and they seem to know, a little bit about what the Force is and what the Jedi are. But then on the other hand, you've got, your Han Solos and A New Hope. Oh, that old hokey religion, and so it's like you get this mix across the entire galaxy where some people are like, I mean, yeah, sure, maybe they existed. I don't really know anything about them. Too, you've got Mando saying things like, "What is this that he's doing? I don't understand what's happening," and not seeming to understand what the child is even doing with his magic hands.
Yeah, not only is it far away from the Jedi Council being in power way back during the prequel time, but they're in the Outer Rim too. So the Jedi Council, maybe a Jedi or two was out there, but it's not like growing up on Coruscant where the Jedi Council was and seeing Jedis all the time.
I was going to say, yep, that it's been so we've only been focused on the Skywalker saga and walking with Anakin and Luke, and of course the Force is involved in that. When you go to different parts of the universe, they aren't as in tune with the Force. So that I right along with that point with you on that, Keith.
And yeah, from a lot of the graphic novels, we'll say the Disney canon ones, there have been a couple of other graphic novels in the past that are considered legend now. But from the Disney canon graphic novels, we know that Emperor Palpatine kind of thought it was in his best interest to keep his sort of Sith legacy under the covers. He didn't really want people to know about it, so he didn't really use his Force lightning around people. He would kill people every now and again, as a show of power, but he didn't use a lightsaber, and he would usually sick Darth Vader or one of his other officers on whoever he was trying to kill in order to prove a point. Very rarely did he reveal that he was Force sensitive, that he had the Force, or that he was a Sith. And I think that might have been because if anybody actually were aware of the Sith, they probably only had that negative connotation of them. They didn't want he didn't want people to be under the assumption, oh, one of those ancient evil wizards is ruling the entire galaxy. Maybe we should overthrow this guy. He wanted to stay in power as long as possible. I think Moth Gideon might be one of those few officers, one of those few people in the galaxy that is fully aware of the Force. He might actually have a little bit of knowledge of what's going on. So we had a character like this in The Last Jedi and in The Rise of Skywalker, drawing a blank on his name now. Forgot to write it down, but guy who played in The Hobbit or in Lord of the Rings as I'll have to look up his name later, but basically he was supposed to originally, as his character was written in a couple of the art books, he was supposed to play a character who knew all the history of the Force and the Jedi and the Sith and everything like that. He had studied it for historical reasons. It could be that Moth Gideon is also interested in this, but for maybe power purposes. And this is where I kind of circle into another theory, and I kind of mentioned this to the guys. I think that Moth Gideon is maybe trying to give himself Force powers. I think he is aware of what people can do with it. He probably saw in the past what Darth Vader could do with it. He could have even seen what Emperor Palpatine did with it, and maybe he wants some of that power for himself.
And I think as an intelligence officer, he would have access to a lot of these reports on, what's going on in Kamino and what's going on. We saw the Kamino officer early on studying Baby Yoda. So there's a lot of information that he would have that the average, Empire officer probably didn't have. I don't think he's going to be necessarily someone who was in power all the time. He may have been an intelligence officer who, after the fall of the Empire, took command of almost like a warlord ship. He goes, well, I got some ships and I got some men, and I'm going to control this part of the galaxy as much as I can until the Republic comes in and tries to stop me. And I'm going to gather as much power as I can, so when they do, hopefully I can fight them off.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point, Keith. That's something that they don't really focus on in any of the Star Wars films or in a whole lot of the other media is, the winding down of a war just on our own planet Earth between two countries takes years. Can you imagine the winding down of a galactic war? A war that took place in an entire galaxy from planet to planet. I can't imagine that the New Republic would be that quick to be able to wipe out all the presidents of the Empire. I think it would definitely take time. And even though it's been 5 years since, the fall of the Empire, there are probably, as we've seen, a lot more remnants of them, and a lot of them may still be holding on to power, at least until the New Republic comes in. So yeah, I totally agree with you. I think Moff Gideon is going to do whatever he wants. He's going to, keep searching for power, and he's going to keep holding on to it for as long as he can, at least until the New Republic tries to take it away from him, for sure.
I also think one of the things that may be coming up as one of the points within season 2, we talked about it, Ezra Bridger. He was one of the main focus points of the entire Rebel series. He became a Padawan whose, Kanan, his master, was killed during Rebels, and he always sort of had a dark edge to him. And, he had a connection to Maul. He had a connection to the Sith.
He was kind of a rogue where he don't do his own thing no matter what anybody said.
Yeah, and we know that, Ahsoka and Sabrine went looking for him, but he's off by himself. No Jedi Master to teach him the ways, and Thrawn there to kind of maybe swing him towards the dark side. We may see Ezra Bridger come back in this, but not be the kid he was in Rebels, but actually have been turned to the dark side. And he could, if he's under the control of Thrawn or working with Thrawn, may join up with Moff Gideon, and then we could have, a much grander fight on our hands. It's no longer just Moff Gideon and this warlord. It could be, Ezra, Thrawn, Moff Gideon all teaming up to kind of take control of this part of the galaxy. Because one of the things we do know, or we've heard, we don't know how true this is, we have heard what the episodes might be called, and one of them is the Republic. And then we have one called the Loyalist. And if the Loyalist is Thrawn coming back to help Moff Gideon, that could be, raise the stakes that much more with someone of Thrawn's, ability to, fight battles and, plan and get things underway. It's going to totally amp it up. But they could be he could just show up and that could be saved for the Ahsoka show. That,
Thrawn's like a character to me. He's very much like the Emperor. He doesn't, he's very schemy. He knows like how things are going to, like any certain situation that could come from a situation that he set up. He's prepared for that end. He already thinks, all right, if this happens, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. He's very calculating, and that's why I like that character. And he's kind of a lot like the Palpatine in that way. So, he could have this planned out. We could, be seeing a new big bad coming out of this, and I think that would be an awesome big bad.
So I really hope that you guys are right. I definitely hope that you guys are right about Ezra, because if he isn't either incapacitated in some way or under Empire control in some way, it kind of looks, it looks kind of shitty for the original series, because you've got, Obi-Wan saying, oh, well, I'm the last Jedi. And well, now Luke, you'll be the last Jedi, where you've got, people like Ahsoka and Ezra, screwing around somewhere else in the galaxy with force powers. And it doesn't really make Luke all that special in the end. So I would hope that that something like that has happened. I would hope that, okay, so I can buy Ahsoka not being there because technically she's not a Jedi. Whatever. Okay, fine. I'll buy that. But Ezra?
Well, remember, he went off into hyperspace somewhere at the end of Rebels, so he
right. That's what I'm saying. So I hope that he's been incapacitated or he's turned to the dark side. Otherwise, another good Jedi somewhere else in the galaxy.
You're saying that story's getting old?
No, I'm not saying that it's getting old. It makes Luke less of an important character. He's not. He's one of the potential chosen ones. It's sort of like the idea behind how familiar? I don't know how familiar you guys are with Harry Potter, but the whole series, Harry Potter is the chosen one up until the very end. Oh, and by the way, that nerd Neville, he's also one of the chosen ones. Forgot to mention that. So I feel like that would be kind of like the same idea. Oh, Luke, he brought balance to the Force until the Disney sequels. Luke brought balance to the Force. Oh, but Ezra was there the whole time too.
And that's why I think it's a much interesting turn to have him go dark side. It kind of plays into what they were setting up during that whole, seeing him go to the dark side of the Force makes more sense because of how they played that whole thing out. He always kind of had that dark edge, and losing his master before his training was done. And then being with a Grand Admiral and Thrawn with the Empire, he's going to do what he can. And he actually did talk to the Emperor at the end. The Emperor was trying to win him over to the dark side, saying he could bring his parents back, using that old, hey, Darth Plagueis the Wise. Have you heard that story? But so he's already been tempted. He's already been there. And without a master, it's a much easy jump to him turning to the dark side. And it makes it a lot better. It adds that villain to if he learns about Baby Yoda, you don't think he's going to want to get him as his apprentice?
Oh,
and then you can have Ahsoka, trying to fight it off or doing, there's so much more, I think, story-wise you can do with Ezra being a Sith than coming back and being this all-powerful Jedi to help everybody.
Plus, I would definitely like to see a non-whiny Ezra too. I know that he was definitely your guys' favorite character in Rebels, and you probably just want to see a non-stop Ezra animated series. All Ezra, all the time, same Ezra channel, same Ezra network. But
did you see my petition?
I did see your petition. I signed it under a couple of different fake names too. But yeah, I could definitely, just like, I prefer the animated Anakin. Maybe I'll prefer a live action Ezra. Who knows? If they kind of work out his being a whiny little bitch syndrome. But yeah, so that I don't know how much that'll play into the Mandalorian. He might make an appearance. It might be mentioned. I think you and Dave are right in thinking that he might actually play a more prominent role in an Ahsoka series. There might be a live action Rebel series or some sort of spin-off from that where, that'll be kind of the overarching theme of that. But you did bring up an excellent point when you mentioned Baby Yoda and Kamino. So there are two kind of theories that people are sort of juggling. One is that Baby Yoda was genetically created on Kamino, that he is not, he wasn't naturally born, that he was created by some Kamino scientists. And the other theory is that Kamino scientists were simply studying him. So it could be that he was naturally born and he was being studied for genetic purposes, because we know that the scientists on Kamino were doing other things than just cloning. They had a lot of different genetic experiments going on, including their idea of implanting and controlling, the clones with chips. So they had a lot of different range as far as the science went that we could dive a little bit deeper into. So yeah, it could go either way. It could go that, the child was purposely genetically engineered, maybe for his natural ability to use the Force. Or it could be that he was being studied as a way to draw the Force out of him.
See, that kind of goes along with my theory on the not the entire plot arc. I left a few characters out of it, but my theory that, all right, Baby Yoda, whatever his name is 50 years old. So this would put him right around that same time as being, when they were making the clones for the army. And if that, the storyline of Rise of Skywalker. Now, if they don't, that whole theory is bunk. But that's a theory I have out there.
They might. We don't know. Again, these are all speculations. We don't really know where they're going to go with it. Again, what we do know is that there is a scientist from Kamino who was studying the child, who was hired to study the child. So we don't know what the actual connection is. So yeah, that could be. Personally, I think they'll stray away from involving Palpatine as much as possible, because as far as I know, everybody is under the assumption at this point, 5 years after the fall of the Empire, everybody has pretty much assumed that he's dead. So I don't think they're going to really mention him or mention his cloning experiments or the idea that he can transfer consciousness or anything like that. I don't know if that will come up in, it might, but maybe in later seasons. What I think might end up happening is, and this is something that I was discussing with the guys earlier, I think they're going to sort of lean a little into partial legends territory. And what I mean by that is, when Disney first announced that they were going to start producing sequel movies, they kind of joked around saying that the prequels were no longer canon. Now, obviously, they still are considered canon, but it could be from a certain point of view. That might be how they view certain elements of it, because I know a lot of people were kind of upset about the idea of midi-chlorians, like, oh, that's, takes away the sort of spiritual or religious element of the Force or whatever, the fact that it's all purely genetic. But they might sort of still lean on that as like an idea that maybe the Empire had, that they could create some sort of genetic clone that possessed the Force, and perhaps they could draw whatever gave it the Force out of it, either via its blood or its genes or whatever, and give it to another person. That's kind of what I think they might end up, going towards. It could be that Moth Gideon is interested in this, being an intelligence officer. It could be that he found documentation relating to this. He could have been the guy who engineered all of this. We don't really know what role he'll have played in all of this, or who wanted this to actually happen. What we do know is that the Empire was for some reason interested in this, the fact that 2 officers in the Empire were involved, and that a scientist from Kamino was involved. So yeah, that's kind of where I think they might end up going with it. I think they're going to sort of mention the idea that perhaps the Empire thought the power of the Force could be pulled out genetic-wise and then given to somebody else who didn't have the ability to control the Force.
See, I'm kind of shying away from both of your guys' theories about the wee baby Yoda being a clone. I think it's a natural born Yoda. And I think all of the interest in him is more so to find out if you can genetically produce a force-sensitive clone, and I think their main goal, we know that Boba Fett's showing up, we know that Rex is showing up, we know that a Camino officer is involved. If he's studying him to try to somehow splice Jango Fett's DNA with the wee baby Yodas to create a potential army of force-sensitive bounty hunters, basically. I mean, if you could get a Captain Rex that is force-sensitive, and you could get a group of them and control them with the chip that they could implant to have, you know, Order 67 or whatever be anything to keep them under. I think Moth Gideon could easily see it within his power to take back the galaxy with an army full of, you know, force-sensitive Jango Fetts.
Well, don't they have that in kind of in the Inquisitors? Aren't they force-sensitive?
They're force-sensitive, but they're not clones.
So they can't be controlled. That's
Yeah,
what you're saying.
They're almost like the younglings. They found them and kind of trained them to be under Vader and work as Inquisitors and not be full-fledged Sith. And maybe, you know, we'll learn more about the Inquisitors where they become a Sith after they work for so long and, you know, hunt down enough Jedi. You know, who knows? But yeah, the Inquisitors are force-sensitive, but not clones.
Look, as long as I can learn how to make a helicopter lightsaber, that's all I care about.
You guys got any theories about how Boba Fett comes back?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Okay, guys, we talked about this before. Very serious. We have absolute proof that this is fact. We've got people on the inside that told us this. Okay, Keith, do you wanna explain this?
Well, I think Dave probably should. It was his theory. You know, this was way back in episode, I think, 5 of The Mandalorian, when we first heard that jingle jangle of Boba Fett walking up on Fennec's body. And Dave had this theory, so I think he should definitely take it away. It has now been confirmed by our insider at Lucasfilm.
Yeah, my theory officially confirmed that the planet was just a huge vessel, if you would, for the Sarlacc. And when he went to the Sarlacc, he actually got digested and pooped out the other side. So this is confirmed with the awesome storytelling they have from the original Lucasfilm crew. That's what happened.
So you heard it here first, folks. Not your status quo and Lucasfilm. Totally 100%, 200, 500% confirmed. There you go. Jango Fett, or Boba Fett, pooped out of Tatooine at the other end of the Sarlacc pit because, as we know, Tatooine is actually just a giant fat body of a Sarlacc pit.
Well, and that's why he couldn't get off. He no longer had his ship. He no longer had his jetpack. So he had to wait over the body of, you know, Fennec after the Mandalorian killed her to get some stuff and get enough credits to get off planet. So he's just been biding his time since Return of the Jedi until,
Right.
you know, the Mandalorian. So.
And when you're being digested slowly like that, you learn the value of patience. And so he's been patiently waiting in the background to make his appearance.
And once again, showing us the value of Beskar steel. You can't be eaten by a Sarlacc.
That's right. It doesn't. Beskar steel does not digest.
All right. Well, you guys have anything else?
I'm done.
All right. So I tell you what, I want all of you guys to go down to the comments. Let us know. Do you think we have any ground to stand on, or do you think that all of our theories should be thrown in the Sarlacc pit and pooped out like Boba Fett? Let us know in the comments below. Tell us what you think. Tell us if you think that the First Order might make an appearance. What are your theories? What do you want to see us talk about? Maybe we'll do a couple more of these Theory-Palooza videos. But yeah, let us know in the comments below, and see you in the next one.